Here with me to discuss the government's latest budget are two guests, Franklin Lam, former executive councillor and founder of HK Golden 50 think tank, and Vera Yuen, University of Hong Kong's lecturer in economics. As now, before me, we have two experts who have extensive knowledge in fiscal policies. Let me start right away by discussing whether Financial Secretary Paul Chan has paved the right path for the recovery of Hong Kong's economy. Vera, as you pointed out in your previous article, that Hong Kong remains one of the very few advanced economies that have not resumed pre-pandemic level of economic growth. And today, Paul Chan says that the economic growth this year is somewhere between 3.5 and 5.5%, and the economy will feasibly recover this year. So are you convinced by his plans to accelerate Hong Kong's catching up with the rest of the world?
Well, Hong Kong in 2022 lagged behind the whole world by about 6%. So we have not recovered to the pre-pandemic level. But as the government lifted the pandemic measures and then welcoming visitors, customers, and business partners to Hong Kong, I mean, naturally, it will rebound anyway. So I don't worry about this. 3.5 to 5.5% is, I think, neutral to optimistic, because for Hong Kong in 2021, I think the rebound was like 6 point something percent. It's about 6%. So let's say this rebound would be about 4%. I think it's a good estimate of it. But there are medium-term risk, like Hong Kong is an export-oriented economy, the small economy doing business with the rest of the world. But many economists predict that the world economy is going into a sluggish growth this year, so it would affect Hong Kong's rebound. And also there are other geopolitical risks, like Hong Kong's caught into the middle of the conflict of US-China tension, and then there's a lot of plans to use Hong Kong to transfer technology for use and then make it into an R&D hub. And if Hong Kong is going into those sanction clauses, then it will impact Hong Kong's growth and economic engine too.
Franklin, what's your take on how Hong Kong could mitigate those geopolitical risks?
Well, we need some really good leadership, and I think a large part of it is not due to Hong Kong itself, but mainland China, Beijing, they are the one who deal with these policies. And then we need very good bureaucrats as perhaps the head of technology bureau. They know how to deal with these different trade deals, and also some trade expert who do not only know the bureaucratic clauses, things on the paper, but really know the international relations.
Franklin, what's your take on this?
I totally share Vera's optimism about the scale of the rebound. To a lot of people, 3.5 to 5.5% in the ultra complex geopolitical environment that we all see is a little bit of a stretch of the confidence. But in particular, like what Vera said, if you look at the past, we trail the region, we trail most developed economies. And if you actually study the trend growth of Hong Kong to the point we had the riots in 2019, if you extrapolate the trend towards the end of 2019 to current, you will see that the potential of the GDP, had we not had the riots nor the COVID lockdowns, in particular in China, then our GDP achieved we're 12% below our potential. It's a very big gap. But because the gap is so big, a bit of rebound, in particular with China releasing COVID, a lockdown, and releasing basically a lot of the consumption demand from tourists and so on, and investment demand to Hong Kong, that makes that headroom, so 3.5 to 5.5% on the 12% GDP that's lost shouldn't be difficult, just by people showing up. So I think that even without Hong Kong government doing all this exceptional a bit about flaunting our perfections, going on to tours, and encouraging people to invest in Hong Kong, encouraging people to come to Hong Kong, taking our show to other people, and doing all sorts of fairs in Hong Kong to attract other people. Even before this, the rebound shouldn't be difficult. So my guess is I'll probably be more optimistic that we will see over 5.5% GDP growth. And consequent to that, we will see inflation that we missed, compared to the rest of the world. Everybody had inflation because they had a post-COVID rebound. We didn't have one, but now that we will have one, so that should take the consumption and level pre-COVID days. But the problem really is that's the second bit of the structure in Hong Kong that we are suffering from. We lost 6.5% of our workforce. If you look at UK and other places, they lost around 1% thereabout to COVID, long COVID, and so on and so forth. We lost 6%. So for Hong Kong, can we do economic growth with fewer people? Well, that takes a heck of a lot of Hong Kong can do, in particular amongst the workforce in Hong Kong.
Today we see the government studying the feasibility of studying an AI supercomputing center, and then Paul Chan also plans to issue more green bonds and infrastructure bonds. Do you think Paul Chan has identified the right engine for economic growth right now?
Yes, R&D is the key to cutting edge growth. I mean, it's internationally recognized. You cannot, just stick with some old industry. I mean, Hong Kong has competitive advantage in being a financial center. So other than that, it has to do more R&D. And I think Hong Kong plays a more strategic role for the mainland China more than ever because of this US-China tension that a lot of these technologies transfer can be done via universities without much monitoring. Let's say it's easier to do so. And then Hong Kong also has some established institution that could still attract some talents to believe that Hong Kong is a good place to stay. However, we need to bear in mind the nature of investments, like investment in human capital and investment in R&D. Some of them are more internationally mobile. That means after you invest into it, the company could take the patent or the invention to other countries and then make it profitable. So in a globalized world, a government should always think about investment in human capital, infrastructure, all these things. But now it has to take into the consideration of how mobile they are. I mean, you can train a bunch of good people and then they all go away and work in another country. So there has to be policies or advantage of making them to stay. And issuing bonds for infrastructure, I think I also said something about that before. I think it points to that the government is not going to run down always reserve to finance the infrastructure, but it has determined that if it's going to cost like billions of dollars, they are going to do this bond. And by issuing bond, it could help also grow the bond market, which Hong Kong has not done very well in the past.
I totally agree. I think Vera mentions specific chunks of the policy address that are stimulative to investment, growth, innovation, and growing our human capital knowledge base. In particular, against the context of what I said, we lost 6% of our workforce across the layers of jobs. But for Hong Kong to grow onto high, the financial secretary mentioned a few times, we want high quality growth. So we want to have really knowledge-led digital economy, that type. We are fallen behind, but with the demands of Greater Bay Area and China, and with the talent pool of China that's scattered all around the world, and the friction between US and China, I think a lot of foreign academics, scientists, engineers, leaders in tech companies, they all foresee that there's all of a sudden there's a glass ceiling descending on them. And if they want to go to escape this descending glass ceiling, where should they go? Some of them, most of them, I would imagine, wouldn't want to go directly back to China. They are in the 30s and the 40s. They have kids that may object vehemently to only 3 hours of internet games play. They probably lose all their friends. If they were just to stick to 3 hours of exchange of games with their friends. But Hong Kong, you can play games as much as your daddy and mommy wants you. And secondly, for the non-working spouses, may well be They quite like a bit of Netflix, which is not available in China. So how can you relocate the entire diaspora of global Chinese talents to China and creating least familial friction? I think Hong Kong is the solution. So to me, very clearly, all these sudden shocks around the world created one very big winner. That's Hong Kong. Chinese companies that used to raise money in the US probably would change their minds, but they need the money. Where are they going to raise it from? From Hong Kong again. So business opportunities, jobs, talents, all will be congregating to Hong Kong. And in that case, well, I would definitely argue that the super connector in Hong Kong has grown multiple times before. So against that backdrop, the reserves of government will be much better spent in growing that infrastructure, the capacity, soft and hard, whether it's university research spaces, spaces for labs and so on. We should be creating all this and creating a multi-generation support of incomes for Hong Kong that can support our community, rising string of community demands. So to me, I definitely think this is the best budget since the handover, because it looked at the immediate need for society and the future generation needs. If you contrast that with a very famous flop this year happening in UK, a potential, or rather, the shortest reigning prime minister proposed something to stimulate growth. But that growth simply led to a 10% collapse in the pound sterling in a day, and the collapse of her government. To me, the Hong Kong small government role, and I think Milton Friedman would absolutely jump for joy in its grave. We're half the size of the public sector of the UK. If you look at the transparency, what that Paul Chan gave today, he's basically said there's a reason why we should have a reserve, and he doesn't really think we should have a 2-year of government spending. So when he leaves his office by 2028, that he will return the reserve back to 14 months, but not 24 months, and it would be almost $1 trillion Hong Kong dollars worth. So more than enough. So in a period whereby all the shocks that we witnessed and experienced all around the world led to US, UK increasing the public sector debt by 20 to 30% of GDP. Well, we only spent half of our reserve. That's it, and we'll grow it back. So in terms of transparency and responsibility for the next generation, who will not see a lot of the tax payment going to servicing the interest payment on the really bulging debts, I think Hong Kong's done a good job.
On this topic, let me throw the question to Vera. Do you think Paul Chan has done enough in investing into Hong Kong's future?
Well, we already have a lot of mega plans for the future, like Northern Metropolis and also the Lantau reclamation of land, or making the artificial island. So these are very long-term plans already. I think in this part is more comprehensive in this budget. It talks about how to attract talent, how to keep talent, and then they set up an office to target some companies and hope that they could open branches in Hong Kong. This is actually a very aggressive plan to do so, because Hong Kong used to be a facilitator of business in its colonial time, and nowadays they've become more interventionist. They want to take a more proactive role in doing such things, but there are not much details of these things. And then the whole direction is still to take advantage of China's growth, like having wealth management swap, and then different kinds of connect, like swap connect, and then attracting family offices. So these are the things that would help keep Hong Kong's financial center status. And the new initiative trying to do R&D, I'm not sure whether it would succeed though, because we don't really have much here now, and it is kind of risky. But without that, I'm not sure whether Hong Kong can keep its competitive edge. And if it couldn't keep its economic growth, like it will get into structural deficits and it won't be able to finance that many projects. I would say all the things are kind of risky, because Northern Metropolis is like 20 years project. And if you ask any companies to do such a project, it's very hard to get a good estimate because it's kind of diverse for the worst scenario and in the best scenario. So I would say we need to be cautious about this, but we are making big plans.
We hope to carry on the discussion, but we will have to close the panel shortly. So one final short question. How would you rate this year's budget out of 100?
I said would be maybe 70. I'm not sure why we should be giving a grade on it because there are so many different dimensions in it. And the thing that I dislike would be, raising of some taxes like cigarette tax, but that's good because I don't think they are necessary. We have deficits of like 340 billion, but because 6 billion was spent on COVID, so we actually didn't have to raise those taxes, and it's regressive. It's harming mostly is the elderly who smoke, and then they would have to carry like greater burden of buying cigarettes. And it's like $70 per box, and they will be switching to those illegal, custom-free smuggled cigarettes. And I think it's harming the livelihood. And when they say they want to give out consumption vouchers to help those needy, and then at the same time they're taxing them, and I think these kind of initiatives are in conflict.
Franklin, how many marks will you give to?
I'll give 2 marks. I'll give 2 marks precisely because of what Vera said. There are a lot of uncertainties. Uncertainties, they are. If you do it well, if you execute well, you gain. If you just lie there and accept these uncertainties, you go down. This is where the can-do comes in. In every bit of Hong Kong, when we every time we face this situation, the stress enables us to re-engineer, remodel, and we always take the next step up. For instance, what I also like is that the government lost a lot of people, but it's now requiring the same civil service number to deliver much bigger output by freezing the headcount. So people have to do more. So you're squeezing efficiency out of the system, fiscally responsible, rather than hiring more people and so on and so forth, and taking talents from the private sector, which are needed to grow the economy. So we're sticking to our principle of a small government, and leading the bulk of the economic rigor to be reserved on the creating new future income streams in technology and in linkages to the rest of the world, reinforcing Hong Kong connectivity with everybody around the world across all sectors, from a humble tourist from Southeast Asia to the most high-tech people around the world, and attracting the best professors, the best researchers to come into Hong Kong. And you look at the launch of the talent attraction scheme. First month already of close to 10,000 people, So if you annualize that, we have 100,000 talents coming to Hong Kong. How many people we lost on immigration? Say 200,000. But but the 100,000 are heads of households. 100, you should multiply it by 3. We already filled up for the talents we already lost. Just like that, without promoting, without any Hong Kong official going abroad to tell the story and handing out application forms. So yeah, I really like that. I think this is back to the can-do. That's why I not only give it 100% this time, I also give it the best budget in the post-handover period, precisely because the challenges are the biggest. We never had geopolitical risk. Past budgets used to be the old budget plus or minus X. Now it's not. It's really like new tentacles, new policy tools, new reaches, new administration, and new discipline in particular on the public sector.
Okay, thank you so much, Franklin and Vera, for joining us to address this so important topic. Thank you.
Okay.